I would define DNA as the blueprint for our bodies, sort of an instruction manual that contains all the genetic information. DNA analysis is actually very reliable, and it's probably the most accurate personal identification system that we have. It ranks right up there with fingerprinting. We find DNA in every cell in our body. The majority of our DNA is nuclear DNA, and these are our 23 chromosomes. DNA can be used to identify different people. It can be used to tell us about the sex of a person if it's unknown. It can be used to tell us about any genetic disorders, and for who our parents are, or for paternity tests, who we're related to. In forensic DNA, a match usually implies that you have a personal identification. So in this case, it would mean, based on your DNA fingerprinting, that you're able to secure a personal identification for those remains.
My role in forensic anthropology is very much hinged around place and environment. I'm very interested in looking at people's life history, so that means where did these people come from, where did they spend their time, did they live in multiple locations, and one of the key applications in forensics, one of the key questions, is not just who is this person, which is really important, but where did this person come from? Because in Vancouver we have a lot of migrants coming in, and so it's possible that we're going to have situations where a missing person report will not match to a local area, and so you have to look elsewhere. So a lot of my research is geared towards trying to figure out from the human tissues that we're left with, can we deduce where this person lived?
I'm a botanist by training, but my first real love was plant ecology. Then secondly, I moved into plant fossils. Fossils are incomplete, often fragmentary, and they're not the whole plant. And that is often what you deal with in a forensic investigation. Some seeds on a shoe or fragmentary leaves associated with a crime scene. So it was a natural transition to go from my plant ecology and fossil work into forensic botany. Usually brought in partway through a police investigation, where the police will have collected some plant materials in association with a crime and send it to me for analysis. Or sometimes I'm actually called in early in a stage to collect materials at a crime scene.
Entomology is simply the study of insects. A forensic entomologist looks at the insects on a dead body, and we try to determine as much information as we can about the body and the death and the scene as we can from those insects. So an entomologist is usually going to be called in to do elapsed time since death, but also whether the body's been moved from one place to another after death. Maybe it's been disturbed by the killer coming back to the scene of the crime. We can use insects to work out where the wound sites are when they're no longer visible to the naked eye to the pathologist. There's a lot of other things we can do with insects in a crime scene, but primarily it's elapsed time since death. Insects are the first witnesses to the crime. So they arrive immediately after death, within minutes or seconds. And they're attracted not really for their own selves, they're attracted to lay their eggs. And they lay their eggs on that body, and those eggs will hatch into maggots, and those maggots will feed on the body and develop through their life cycle. So if we look at the insects on the body, and we look at the life cycle, and we determine what insect they are, what species they are, we can work out how old the oldest maggots are. So if the oldest maggots on the body are, say, 7 days old, then it tells us there's been maggots on this body for 7 days. So he's been dead, he's been a dead body for at least 7 days. So that gives us a minimum elapsed time since death. I think the police are finally realizing that insects are evidence, and we can use them in a death investigation. And once one police officer has seen a case that I've done and seen how useful it's been in court, then everybody says, hey, well, I'm going to try that too. And suddenly there's an explosion. Everybody wants to start using this. So when you tell a police officer that the insects on the body, which to him are just something gross and disgusting, and they're in the way of his evidence, you tell that police officer that he or she could actually get a time of death from those insects, they're very pleased. If the police have 6 suspects in a homicide and I can tell them when death took place, that might eliminate 4 of them right up front.